JD Vance began the ensuing roast battle between him and Tim Walz with this fiery video. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Here it is.
When Trump was at the NABJ conference, he was asked whether you'd be ready to assume the presidency on day one, and he responded by talking about how the vice president pick doesn't really impact the election outcome.
Sure.
Was that the response that you were hoping for from the former president?
Well, what the president has said, and I agree with him, is that most people are voting at the top of the ticket. Now, Tim Walz is a crazy radical, of course. He allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis, but most people are going to be voting for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. I think it was a common sense observation. He said it before I was the pick. He said it after I was the pick, and I think he's absolutely right. Now, I will say that on the vice presidential issue, it's interesting what Tim Walz says about Kamala Harris. Tim Walz is a person, again, who promoted rioters burning down the biggest city in his state. This is a guy who wants to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens. This is a guy who wants to take children away from their parents if those parents don't consent to sex changes for minors. This is a radical human being who comes from the far left wing of the Democrat Party. And what Kamala Harris is telling all of us by selecting Tim Walz is that she bends the knee to the far left of the Democrat Party. She's done it every single time in government. She's done it in who she selected as her VP nominee, and she will do it if the American people give her a promotion to President of the United States. We don't have to guess at what Kamala Harris believes. The fact that she keeps on leaning on the most far-left people in the Democrat Party tells us exactly who she is and what she stands for.
So I want to speak to that video in just 1 second, but Tim Walz also did a campaign event with Kamala Harris, and this was really intense, what he was saying about JD Vance as well, and frankly, it shocked me a little bit, so, with a little jab back. So watch this video as well.
JD Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I gotta tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
So before I speak to JD Vance and what he said in his video, and by the way, very good speaker. I think what JD Vance was saying was all true. But before I speak to that, I got to say as well, as someone who is a conservative and a Republican, Tim Walz is a very great speaker. The whole dynamic of this race has completely changed with him, and this is why. Because what you had before was two really incompetent people against Trump and Vance. You had Biden, and when I say incompetent, I mean in terms of rhetoric, in terms of speaking. You had Biden and Kamala Harris. Just think about that for a second. That was what the Democrats chose for their most powerful people that were going to go against Donald Trump. You had Biden, who was literally dying. He's still dying, of course, and he's somehow the president of the United States. But you had Biden who's dying and cackling Kamala. And that was their best. That was the best they had to offer. But now what you have is Kamala Harris, who still sucks, but you have Tim Walz, who, despite being a major radical, is a very good speaker. He has a little bit of what Joe Biden had, where he kind of looks a little angry sometimes. He starts yelling, but it's a little bit more powerful than I think Joe Biden. Joe Biden was like, dude, you're an old dude and you're senile. Tim Walz, you're a little angry. I could see if you're a Democrat being kind of into it. I think as someone who's not a Democrat, I look at him like it's a little too angry for my likes. I think it might turn off some independents, but at the very least, it clearly fired up the people who were there. Make no mistake, though, JD Vance is an equally good speaker. So I think the debate is going to be really interesting between the two in terms of just rhetoric. Neither one just sucks. Like Kamala Harris sucks. Joe Biden sucked in the debate. But I think JD Vance and Tim Walz have a very equal kind of charisma and energy to them. The key with the race, though, is this. If the charisma and the rhetoric is the same, the key to the race is who has the truth and the reasonable policies that are going to pull in the moderates. And again, I'm not even saying someone I agree with, but I'm just saying who can get the biggest voter base. Because fancy words probably aren't going to cut it if they're both on equal footing, and I think they are. And so Trump and Vance have established and tell the story of truth much better than Tim Walz, in my opinion. So on one hand, you have Trump and I'll just lay it out for you guys. On one hand, you have Trump and Vance, whose big policies are basically lowering taxes, closing the border, and relegating abortion to the states. Those are like their big things. And again, I'm really not trying to straw man this. That is really what Trump and Vance are big on. On the other hand, now you have Harris and Walz. And again, I'm really not trying to straw man this, but there are big priorities as far as I'm aware, and it's a little bit hard to tell because, as I'll talk about later, the media haven't asked them any questions. So actually no one knows. This is just kind of what I'm going off of what they've said in the past. They want to appease their pro-Palestinian protesters because there's a part of the Democrat wing that is really pro-Palestine. It's one of the reasons I think why Kamala Harris didn't choose Josh Shapiro, a Jew, to be her VP. Their priorities are banning fracking, helping, trying to curb climate change for whatever, the Green New Deal, all those things. That's a priority for them. Allowing children to get gender surgeries. This is something that Tim Walz is huge on in Minnesota. And allowing abortion up until 5 seconds before the baby passes the birth canal. I mean, maybe the way I phrased it was a bit of a straw man, but no, that's like legit. That's what they believe. So that's their policies. And so I ask you, which list of policies is more appealing to Americans? And more importantly, really, which list of policies is more appealing to the undecideds, the people who are, MAGA's voting MAGA, progressives are voting Kamala. I mean, that is what it is. But the people in the middle, what list is more appeasing to you? Banning fracking or lowering taxes and shutting the border? And what we see already is, as I said, I think the truth is on, Vance and Trump's side, hands down every time. But what you see is the media will cover for Harris and Walz. So it is then Vance and Trump's jobs to get the message out about how radical this ticket is. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please go down below, comment, like, and subscribe, and watch another video.